Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and these two bins that I've already got out on the bench are two of the systems listed here on the bottom. Everything we're feeding today are the European nightcrawlers. Two of them here are buddied up because they're the same age. They've been fed the same number of times. There's just a little slight discrepancy between the two bins. Bin number 2 having a somewhat larger population. Next two bins that we're going to be feeding, those are in black plastic tubs, also European nightcrawlers. But much younger. So we might play the game a little differently with those guys as far as moisture embedding. Here, in these systems, the older ones, now receiving their 29th feeding, I think are getting pretty close to the point where we might want to start gearing the systems up for not just everyday composting. I mean, they're going to be continuing to compost those materials I just set aside, but more gearing them up for us being able to harvest the castings they've been making over all that time. These two plastic sheets are coming off at the end. Something we already hinted at, I believe, because we've been observing higher than wanted levels of moisture in the system. So I had just prepared those and cut them to size. But this, what you see now, is the way we left these systems last time. Observing that the moisture was maybe a little more than we would consider to be ideal, but you know, something the worms probably really enjoy. But sometimes when it comes to harvesting the castings, it's to our advantage to have slightly more flaky, easy flowing material than stuff that's clumpy, and most often just getting it a little drier is what gets you to that point. So last fed down the middle as usual, I assume, because we didn't do anything out of the ordinary. You know, I am kind of concerned about putting more and more of this fresh bedding in. So I figured the bedding they're going to get today is just a single piece of leftover cardboard from those new cardboard coverings that I made. And I'm actually soaking them in water right now so that they'll go in here damp. But yeah, I'm definitely feeling that this stuff is a little bit more clumpy than I would want it to be. Certainly wouldn't mind if it was giving off some of its moisture slowly so that it doesn't do that. And I don't think it would need to do much. I think it would be pretty attainable within maybe a month or so if I just replace those plastic coverings with those cardboards. You saw how there was minimal breathing room around the cardboard, and just by the nature of the cardboard, I think it'll allow for some of the moisture in the material below to pass through and escape the system. So so far, after I wasn't really expecting after 2 weeks to find much leftovers, unless obviously we find some sort of a really slow composting item that might have already been in here for many weeks or months even. But so far we haven't bumped into anything like that. I think we have been gearing up their feedings to be materials that should break down pretty quickly and not leave leftovers like this stem of a banana. This thing probably goes back 6 or more months. They'll eventually do away with it, and you can see it's getting close to that stage, but it's still got some ways to go because it's one of those slow-going materials. And you know, I figured I'd take a break at this point and move over to here because we have been trying to treat these systems when they're set up side by side like this to just be kind of like an imaginary one large system that I'm working on. So when I get to the edge, I shouldn't really stop because of the plastic. I should just continually keep going back and forth. I don't know, I think there's just still something to it that makes you feel like you gotta just keep going with it. But I think here too we're gonna find, you know, pretty similar results. These two systems have been pretty much identically maintained for all their lives from day one. It's not too surprising to find that they're very similar, and by that I also mean the moisture level and the clumpiness that I'd like to see to be much more granular. So this system, both of the systems, they're going to benefit a lot, I think, from getting those cardboard tops put on as replacements. I've even got kind of a nice little bonus piece of newspaper to drape over the top surface once we have fed and covered back up, so they could come up and nibble on that too. And you know, I've also got that leftover piece of cardboard from when I made the replacement top cardboard lids. So that'll go in as the carbon supplement as their as their feeding goes in. All that delicious melon that you saw, all those soup greens and stuff. It's all stuff that I got from my mom. I didn't really have a chance to go through it to figure out what all it is, but as we're feeding, we'll get to check out what kind of stuff the food assortment consists of. As you saw, it was mainly the skin of some cantaloupe melon. So that stuff's probably not going to last. All right. Let's get on to feeding these little guys, because we've still got those other 2 bins to tend to as well. So down here in the middle, which is our kind of customary place to administer our feedings, is where we're going to put in that nice big chunk of cardboard that was left over from making those new coverings, top coverings. That'll be just like one big massive piece of stuff that I could pull out of my way if I wanted to, you know, see how the rest of the material around it's doing, and, you know, give the worms a chance to break down all that little leftover material that's been stacked in here over many, many months at this point. So let's see here. I've got 2 of them. One for this guy and another for that guy. And on top of that is where we're going to pile in their food. So they'll break it all down, they'll chew it all up. They love cardboard, that's for sure. But we've got to be fair here, so let's be careful not to leave too much for these guys and not enough for the other 2 systems we've got to feed. So I'm going to be looking to remove about 1/4 of what I've got in my hand here to put into each system. And it's starting to look like we've given these guys a nice assortment of juicy bits, as well as the more tough outer skin of the cantaloupe. And then it's usually this sort of stuff that I assume is a little bit easier for them to gobble up. These leafy things, even these stem ends of a piece of cabbage or whatever that was, they couldn't just burn through something like that so quickly. So there's not a lot of this. We're going to have to be fair and leave the, oops, okay, whatever. Leave the other system some of this too. So why don't we consider that as a fair split, and that's going to be their feeding. So I was even like thinking to myself, should we make this into maybe the last feeding and sort of transition these systems into more of like a foraging mode, so that once they burn through this last feeding, they've got to turn their attention back to the leftovers, whatever's still floating in the material. I've really considered that that might be a good next step for this system. So for now, I'm just treating this as a feeding, as I'm going to register it that way, but I'm not really going to change the phase counter thing on my spreadsheet. I got a spreadsheet where I say, okay, up until whatever today's age is, you know, up until day 324 it was everyday composting, but then we transitioned to the foraging phase. I do kind of keep track of that, just so maybe at some point in the future it will be useful information to relate to or have at my disposal. Oh, yeah. There's a little difference. I can feel that this stuff here might be a little drier already, because it seems to crumble really readily, or a little bit more readily than what it seemed like in the other system. But they're both quite damp, and I think they'll both benefit from having their plastic coverings replaced. Now, over the top here, I've got a couple pieces of newspaper, a little extra bonus carbon food source that they can nibble on if they decide they want that instead. And no more bubble wrap. I'll go back on these bubble wrap coverings that we've been using until now and make sure no worms were left behind. And then on goes the replacement coverings. So now this one, yeah, much more greasy on this side. Let's put the cleaner side facing up. And each one has like its own little unique ways that it seems to ventilate a little bit. These have these corners, but I think this one was the more damp one anyway, so having a system where we got those 2 big openings might be beneficial for this one anyway, in terms of maybe needing a little bit more drying. Alright, I'm going to swap these two systems out for the other two we've got to feed, and then we'll continue. Alright, that brings us to the two younger systems. The 210-day-old and the 186-day-old systems getting their 22nd and their 17th feedings. Their populations are actually a little bit even closer than those two systems that were launched on the same day, oddly enough. So these pieces of paper we were hinting at using these down in the system where the worms can get at them. But I've got a couple replacements. So these are just going to continue as shade covers for one more round, it seems. And here, since these systems have quite a ways to go, I really don't mind so much if the moisture level remains a little bit more damp than than what we've got in the other systems, where we'd like to see a little bit more drying so the material can be a little bit more manageable. Here, if the worms are able to do their thing a little bit more efficiently due to the heightened moisture content, then let's leave it that way. And since they've got a ways to go, we can even give them some of my prepared bedding. I guess if I had to give a reason why I might want to see a little bit of drying is because of these little springtails. I've been seeing some of these pop up in many of my systems. See, if you peel away a little bit of the top surface, they're even in greater numbers, lurking right below the surface. So I'm questioning whether we might benefit by replacing those plastic coverings in here with some oh boy, something that's a little bit more breathable. I don't know. Look at all these leaf stems. I guess we're going to see the same in here. And since I guess 2 weeks have gone since the last feeding, the only types of leftovers we should expect to bump into are sort of slow composting things like this thing right here. Stem of a pumpkin. Usually if there's one in one of these bins, then it means there's probably one to be found over there too. Yeah, you know, it does seem like the heightened moisture is making it into a really cozy place for the worms to be. It seems a little bit muddy, but with all the worms in it, it doesn't clump together because all the worms are kind of creating a, I don't know, some sort of something in the medium that allows it to crumble pretty readily. But I think if it wasn't for all the worms being in this stuff, the stuff would be a little bit more clumpy. But whatever, let them have it this way, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe at the end, if we wanted to, we can put the plastic coverings back on in such a way that they might offer the system a little bit of extra breathing around the edges. So maybe we don't have to be so thorough covering up when it comes to putting back the plastic covers, which here I believe I am going to do. I guess another option would be to bring over the bubble wrap that we'd been using on the other systems. Because that stuff, by its nature, allows for little cavities and little air pockets under itself, so maybe that would even offer a little bit more breathability. And then those plastic bags that we're doing the covering here would be retired. I thought that I'd see many more springtails. I guess I did bump into a few here and there, but I don't think we've got any sort of like a chronic situation. But perhaps if we were to let the system start airing out a bit, maybe the lessened moisture content would kind of cause the springtails to reduce in numbers, or one can only hope. Alright, so I guess my main objective there was to give the whole system a nice little airing up. What do we have here? Have I forgotten about our little test object? It seems like I did. I got so caught up in whatever I was doing there that I kind of overlooked the fact that we'd already been running something in here for quite some time now. I didn't make note of how long it's been. I'll probably flash that on the screen to provide something specific. But this is a bag that was labeled as compostable. Some of it is even still readable, legible. And, well, I mean, there's holes in it, obviously. There's worms on it. And I just don't want to really put it to the test, in terms of trying to like squeeze it or tear it or see how fragile it's become. I'd rather just stick to visual observations and let the worms do their breakdown of it without my help, crushing or grinding or tearing. Alright, so I guess I could have put a good hurting on that bag by just being really rough with it and shredding it to pieces as soon as I came across it, but there was something a little different about it. Kind of made me slow down. Here too we've got some interesting leftover bedding bits, whatever those are. They look like paper towels or something, but they're pretty thick. Alright, let's get these little guys fed and finish this major interruption we've been doing here. Let's get this pumpkin stem back down here. There was another one, wasn't there, besides this one? No. If I encounter it, I'll put it right in there alongside that other one. This is something, but it's not a pumpkin stem, it's a corn cob. I can feel too it's soft. I don't want to break it. I'm just going to let it go at its own rate. Banana stem, I believe, or whatever. Alright, yeah. Now we can give them their feeding. Alright. Definitely tell some of these little guys are a little agitated by me being so disruptive. Sorry guys, I'll be done momentarily. Then you could sink your teeth into some yummy melon. Get these old pieces of bedding type material back down, and then we'll place the compostable bag below where all the food's going to go, piled in nice and generously right on top of the compostable bag, almost guaranteeing traffic all over it. And we'll continue to see how it makes progress here in the worm bins. Well, this worm bin only. I only had one bag like that. It's pretty much a fair split of the yummy melon. In come the healthy foods, the veggies, the greens and the various whatnot. Got some carrot peel in here too. I think there was some cauliflower. This stuff is just going to turn instantly to mush and the worms are going to love it. Alright. Well, that was a fun check-in with the European nightcrawlers. The covering, the paper covering that I was going to give them, very similar to what I just put into the other bins, just some old newspaper that was laying around, and I kind of tore each piece in half so that I could use them as replacement top coverings here. And then what do? Bubble wrap or plastic bags? Plastic bags I can leave the edges to be ventilated, but that's about it. I guess for now I'm going to come back on with the bags that were on here. They're kind of see-through, so to promote traffic on that piece of paper that we just placed in here, we'll create some shade with that other nice clean newspaper draped over the top. You can see a couple of these worms already want out because of my disruptive nature. Sorry, little guys. We're done. We'll get a chance to relax now after the big hand leaves. But that's the end of the video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Before you go though, really quick, don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up. That's always very much appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. Take care now.